Good morning, everybody. My name is Mike at Filmboy24. Today I have a very interesting experiment. It uses a nearly 100-year-old camera, and I coupled it with some really old film, maybe 70 years old. Let's see what we get. Back again for another beautifully crazy experiment. Before I get started, how about do me a huge favor and hit the like button? I'll just take a second and do it for me real quick. It helps me a lot. It helps the algorithm, YouTube's algorithm. So they suggest my videos. I mean, that's why you do videos. You want people to see them, so just do that for me really quick. Go ahead. Now that that's out of the way, I want to tell you what I did about a week ago. I got this beautiful Bell Howell. It's that 70 series crank camera, 16 millimeter, 100-foot internal load camera. It's not a turret camera like the more modern as in 50s, 70 series cameras. This is the single lens. This was one of the absolute original Bell & Howell models, manufactured in the mid-20s. This may be their first model. I'm not 100% sure, but I know this one was manufactured in the 20s. It has just the 8 and 16 frames per second dial here on the front. It's similar to the way the K3 is, where the little dot here for 8 frames per second is quite a bit away from the denote 8 frames per second number here. So I'd assume they probably put the motors in them and then every one is governed just a little bit different because they're not quite as precise as today's electronics. So they would figure out where 8 frames per second was, then they would put the hash mark. Likewise with 16, some of the models later, as in like the next 10 years or so, had different frame rates here. I believe it was 8, 16, and 24, or 12, 16, and 24, something like that. They were a little bit different. That's why I believe this was the original model. It is not a reflex camera like most of the 70 series are not. It has the parallax finder on the side, which is simply a tube with a tiny little looking glass on this side and a tiny little framed glass on the front. Now, these side finders were set up in this camera anyway for 25 millimeter lenses, which is exactly what this is. This lens is a Taylor Hobson Cook 1-inch lens, a f3.5. The range goes all the way up to f16. So not quite as wide or as stopped down as you would want. Good enough though. Definitely good enough for the 20s and, well, fairly good enough for the 20s. At any rate, what I decided to do, and that's basically it, by the way. That's all of the features of these cameras. They're hand crank. This one did not come with a crank when I bought it. I got this at Goodwill of all places for about 30 bucks. And I honestly didn't know if it worked or not. So I had to buy a hand crank, a little crank online, because this was not with it. And these just pull in and push out. And I cranked it up. And I pushed the little shutter release on top here. It works. I did oil it a little bit. I was able to dig up a manual online and it showed you where to oil the basic oiling. You just pop these 2 little pins out of the front here, and there's a couple little oil spots inside here. This is where your film goes. Straight in here. Very basic. Your full reel goes on top. You pull this little lever, like so, that opens up your entire gate area. You thread in the 9 position, which is how most of these are. You thread your film emulsion out behind the gate area in front of the pressure plate, back onto your take-up reel. Push the lever forward again. Now you do have to form your little loops here on the top and the bottom. It's real easy to do. And make sure that your pull-down claw is engaged in one of the perfs. Close the cover, twist the locking mechanism on the side, and you're done. That's it. The only other thing that I can think of that this camera employs is a footage counter. Now, it's not like a lot of the newer cameras where when you open the cover to load your film, it resets the footage counter. This one you actually have to do manually. And you just twist it, get it to 0. That's the camera in a nutshell. The lens. The lens is like I said, a 1-inch, which is 25 millimeter. It's a fixed focus, so there's no focusing whatsoever. Anything from about 4 feet and beyond should be in pretty clear focus, and we'll find out in 1 second. So I figured, like I do in most of my videos, there's probably no better way to test a 100-ish year old camera than with some unknown age, really old, odd film. And that's exactly what I did. Now this film, I've had this for several years now. I got it, I think, on eBay maybe 4, 5, 6 years ago. I can't remember exactly. And when I got it, I immediately put it in my deep freezer with all the rest of my film. And I forgot about it. And I was digging through there, pulling some film the other day, and I saw it and I said, bing, let's see what it is. So I dug a roll out, and then I remembered. It's at least labeled on the front. I'm hoping that's what it is, and I believe it is, because on the edge of the film it does say Ansco. It's Ansco Hypan Reversal. Now, there's virtually no information on the World Wide Web about this particular name of film. I know Ansco, and they were incorporated by GAF and blah, blah, blah. But this particular Ansco Hypan, there's Ansco Super Hypan. I don't know if that's what this is. So I think this was a reload. I think somebody loaded this 100-foot reel because this was actually closer to 95 feet, unless Ansco was giving you 95. This is a little typed label because in the 20s, that's what they used. You didn't have your phone and your computer. And it literally says Ansco Hypan Reversal, 16 millimeter times 100, ASA 50 daylight. ASA 50. Okay, so it wasn't a very fast film, but maybe it was then. So I'm testing this camera, which really, it only opens up to 3.5. Went out back, shot some really boring stuff. It may not be boring for you if you like Adirondack chairs, static shots of them, and swing sets. Just wanted to see, first and foremost, can we still get an image out of this stuff, which I believe to have been manufactured in the 40s and 50s. Maybe you can tell me better. And secondly, what does this do? I mean, I've had 70 DRs and 70 DAs in the past, but I've never had one quite this old. I cleaned up the lens a little bit, you know, just did some lens cleaner here and there. It seems to work fine. The f-stop ring seems to turn just fine. So I wanted to see if we could get any sharp images, or really any images at all. So like I say, I took it out back, cranked it up, and the beauty of this is on one crank, you can get about 1/4 of the way through the film. It's not like the Bolex or the K3s where you got to really crank them quite a few times to get through 100 feet of film. This one does well with one crank. Now, I did shoot it at 16 frames per second. I did process the film in HC110B, and I processed it in this processor right here. This is my trusty Morse G3 tank. If you're not familiar with my particular one and some of my results, my first black and white test came out pretty good. I'll put a link up there somewhere for you to check it out if you're interested. Anyway, let me get rid of this. There we go. So I used HC110B, like I said. I did it for 16 cycles. 1 cycle over, 2 cycle, 3 cycle. I processed it for 16 cycles. Then I rinsed it. I fixed it for another 16 cycles. Rinsed it a bunch. Took it out and let it dry. Here's what we got. The good and the bad. Well, the good is we got an image. And some more good is it's pretty darn steady. The registration in this camera is pretty spot on. I'd say the images are pretty sharp. Not a bad lens. The bad, well, we got lightning again. We got the mold and the cracks and the, the aging effects on the film. Poor storage, age, I don't know, it's just rough. I had some emulsion damage. I don't know if you saw on the right side, most of the film. Kind of looks almost like a weird ladder looking thing. Well, that was in the emulsion. I could see it when the film was drying. There was nothing I could do about that. I don't know if it was sticking together for the last 70 years or maybe something happened in processing, which I doubt. Anyway, we had an emulsion issue. Overall, I'm pretty happy. I honestly can't wait to try some modern black and white stock in this camera and just see, what it can do. I don't see any light leaks to speak of. The focus was pretty nice. Exposure was pretty spot on in most places. And honestly, I just used my noggin. I didn't even use a meter. So overall, I'm pretty happy with the crappy footage. This didn't let me down. It was $30 well spent. Well, $50 because I paid $20 for the hand crank here on the side. For a 100-ish, it's about 95-year-old camera, wow. If you enjoyed this footage or if you like videos like this, please do me a favor and tap the like button. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think of the footage. Again, there's a lot wrong with it. I understand that. It's old. There is a little sort of a vertical scratch down the center at times too. I think that probably was me somehow. So leave me a comment if you enjoy videos like this. See this picture? How about consider subscribing? It would mean a lot to me. This channel has been progressing nicely and I love it and I appreciate it. All of the people that are making that happen. Obviously couldn't do any of it without you. You. Particularly you. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And until the very next time that I see each and every one of your stunningly beautiful faces. That was smooth. I'll see all of you on the very next go-around.